From the desk of Zoe Washington, read by Mrs. Elkins. This week I will read chapters 8, 9, and 10. Let's get started. Chapter 8. If I couldn't bake at Aries Cakes, at least I could do it at home. On Thursday, Grandma and I were in the kitchen getting ready to make fried Oreos, one of the recipes from Ruby Willow's cookbook. I just mixed the batter that we'd dip the Oreos in, and now I was putting some confectioner's sugar into a shaker. We'd shake the powdered sugar on top of the fried Oreos at the end, and we'd eat them while they were still warm and gooey, with mugs of cold milk. Meanwhile, Grandma was busy pouring oil into a pot that was heating up on the stove. She was wearing my mom's red apron over her white t-shirt and jeans. My apron, which my parents gave me for Christmas, had pastel macaroons all over it. My phone was connected to Bluetooth speakers on the kitchen table. I'd opened the music app and shuffled all my songs. I was twisting the top back onto the shaker right as Stevie Wonder's song came on, Superstition. I had downloaded it after reading Marcus's first letter. You like Stevie Wonder? Grandma started bopping her head as she finished pouring the oil, making her turquoise beaded earrings jiggle. She loved fun earrings. I heard this song at Jasmine's house once, I lied. Her dad was playing it, I liked it, so I added some of his songs to my playlist. You've got soul, I love it. Grandma wiggled her body as she sang along with the chorus. I started dancing too. Then my phone chimed, interrupting the song. It was my alarm set for noon. I practically jumped to turn off the alarm before Stevie Wonder's voice filled the kitchen again. What was that for? Grandma asked. Nothing. I wiped my hands off on a towel and grabbed my phone. I'll be right back. Don't start without me. I bolted down the hall for the foyer and peeked out at our main street from the storm door. A minute later, like clockwork, the mail carrier walked up the porch steps. He saw me standing there and gave me a quick wave. I opened the door and he handed the mail to me. Thanks, I said. Enjoy your day, he said, and turned to go. I let the door close behind me and quickly flipped through the stack. There it was at the bottom, with the same prison return address, the same flag stamp, and my name and address handwritten again, but this time Marcus had written with black ink instead of blue. The envelope was a little thicker, like there was more than one sheet of paper inside. My heart raced. I left the rest of the mail on the foyer table and went straight to my room to read it. To my little tomato. I can't tell you how happy I was to get your letter. I actually shed a few tears, and people here thought someone must have died. I can count the number of times I've cried as an adult on one hand. Getting your letter was one of them. Want to know another time? When I first found out your mother was pregnant with you. When she told me, I burst into tears and actually fell down to my knees. I always wanted to be a father, since my dad was always such a great one to me. I wish I'd had the chance to be a better dad to you. When I found out I was going to prison, well, that was another time I cried. I hate that I'm missing out on your life and so many other things. But back to happy stuff. You asked me about Little Tomato. It's from a song. You can probably tell I'm really into music. The song is called Hang On Little Tomato, and it's by a group called Pink Martini. I liked the sound of Little Tomato for a nickname, so I started calling you that. Now you're Zoe, but you'll always be my Little Tomato. Speaking of names, yes, you can call me Marcus. I understand how weird this is for you. Don't feel bad about that. It's got to be especially strange since it sounds like you never got my other letters. I've sent you a lot over the years, but when I never heard back, I figured either you didn't want to write me or maybe your mom wouldn't let you. I wouldn't blame her if she didn't, but I kept sending letters so you'd always know that I wanted to hear from you. I'm so glad you wrote back now. I'm happy you want to get to know me. You can ask me whatever you want, and I promise to answer honestly. You're probably wondering about my life. Prison is not a great place to be, but I try to keep my head down and focus on my studies. I first got here right after I started college. Getting a degree was always really important to me, and I didn't want being in here to change that. It took me a while, but I eventually got my bachelor's degree from a college that mails the coursework to inmates at my prison. I decided to study sociology, why people are the way they are. Now I'm working on my master's. It helps me pass the time and keeps my brain working. I hope you understand how important it is to have an education. Do you like school? What else are you into? I hope you'll write me another letter. Love, Marcus. My mouth dropped open as I finished reading. I read the letter again. Was he pretending to be nice? To care about me? He seemed so sincere, so real. My gym class teacher once had us do this relaxation exercise where we had to lie on the floor, tense up all our muscles at one at a time, and then relax each muscle one at a time. I thought it was pointless, and the mats where we were lying on smelled like 100 sweaty armpits. But by the end of the exercise, I actually did feel better, looser. Reading that letter, it was like I'd been tensing my whole body for all of my 12 years, and now I could finally relax. At least a little bit. Zoe, what's wrong? I startled at the sound of Grandma's voice. She was now standing in my bedroom doorway. I gripped the pages in my hand, almost crushing them. You were gone for a while. She took a couple steps closer to me, worried lines all over her face. I sat on top of the letter so she couldn't see what it said. What's going on, baby girl? Grandma asked. You can talk to me. I said the first thing that popped into my head. It's Maya. She wrote me a letter from camp. The words tumbled out. I miss her. Grandma nodded. I can understand that. I promise she'll be back home before you know it. I nodded, barely able to look her in the eyes. I couldn't tell her who the letter was really from. She might tell Mom and Dad. Grandma glanced at my desk and saw the open box of stationery. Her face lit up. You're using the stationery I gave you. Yep. I had to think of a lie fast. Gonna write Maya back at camp. Great. She flashed me a warm smile. Well, the oil's hot and ready. I don't know about you, but my mouth is watering thinking about these fried Oreos. She winked. I glanced down at the letter and then back at Grandma. Writing back to Marcus could wait. Mine too. I'll be right there. Just give me a minute. Okay, Grandma said. She left, and I folded up the letter carefully, putting it back into its envelope. I opened my desk drawer, took out my sixth grade math notebook, and hid the envelope between two random pages. That night after dinner, I went into my room, closed the door, and read Marcus's letter again. I knew I'd only planned to write him back one time, but I still had so many questions for him. I couldn't believe he'd sent other letters, and I'd never gotten them. I wonder how many he'd sent, and what could have happened to them. Maybe they'd got lost in the mail, or he didn't have my correct address until now. I wish I knew what they'd said. I grabbed a fresh piece of stationery and put on my headphones. I downloaded Hang On Little Tomato to listen to as I wrote. It was totally different from the Stevie Wonder song. The first half was instrumental, with only a horn playing the melody, and then a woman started singing along in the second half. She had a really pretty voice, and she sang about hanging on when you felt sad or alone. If you hung on, everything would be all right. I wasn't completely sure what you were supposed to hang on to, but I liked the message. The idea that things would get better eventually. Maybe it meant things between me and Trevor could get better. It wasn't until the song repeated for the third time that I realized the words Little Tomato weren't even in the lyrics. Why name the song that then? I thought about that and figured that Little Tomato must be who the song was for, the person the singer was singing to. The picture on the song's cover, the guy was holding a small child in the air. Maybe it was a message to that little kid that everything would be okay. It made me smile. I thought that Dad would like the song, since it had a jazzy feel to it. I couldn't tell him about it, though. I wouldn't want to have to lie about how I discovered it. Plus, I kind of wanted to keep the song to myself. I played it again and started to write. From the desk of Zoe Washington, July 7th. Dear Marcus, I'm listening to Hang On Little Tomato right now as I write this. It's not the kind of song I normally listen to, but I like it. I never thought I'd want to be called a vegetable. Or is a tomato a fruit? That always confuses me. If it's a fruit, then why is it always in regular salads and with other vegetables, but never in fruit salad? Anyway, after listening to the song, I don't mind the nickname. That's cool that you're getting your degree. I like school too. I know it's not for a long time yet, but I'm excited for college. I really want to go to the CIA. No, not the government CIA. People always ask me that. The Culinary Institute of America. My dream is to become a pastry chef and make desserts all day long. This summer, I have an internship at a bakery in Beacon Hill. If I do a good job, my mom will let me audition for a kid baking show on the Food Network. I really want to get on the show so I can win the prize money and have my very own published cookbook. It'd be a dream come true. Besides baking, I like riding my bike, reading, and hanging out with friends. Except right now, I'm sort of in a fight with one of my friends. That's a whole other story. My favorite subject in school is French class. I like languages. I want to become fluent in more than one. Maybe I can even become a pastry chef in France. What did you like to do when you were my age? Also, I'm curious about your family. Where are your parents? Do you have any siblings? Sincerely, Zoe. Chapter 6. If I was going to keep Marcus's letters a secret from Mom and Dad, I had to make sure I checked our mail before they did. This wasn't hard during the week when they were at work and I was home with Grandma. I paid special attention to our mail delivery for 3 days and figured out that our mail carrier always came to our house between 12 and 12:30 p.m. I set an alarm on my phone for noon so I could look through the mail as soon as it arrived. On Saturdays, I would have to make sure I got the mail before my parents did. On the first Saturday after I mailed my letter to Marcus, my parents and I went to breakfast at the Broken Egg. It was a hole in the wall place in Davis Square whose menu had 20 different egg dishes and other 20 pancake varieties. We always got there early before it filled up with college students. The three of us squished into a tiny wooden booth in the corner of the restaurant. When our food arrived, it took up the whole table. Dad got eggs Benedict with a side of potatoes. Mom got a veggie omelet with fresh avocado on top. I got the triple berry pancakes, which were sprinkled with powdered sugar. They were the fluffiest pancakes ever, and I loved that they were both sweet and tangy, my favorite combination. I want to ask you something, I told my parents between bites. The answer's yes, Dad said. How do you know what I was going to ask? But then he said, You do have powdered sugar on your nose, and smiled. Dad, that wasn't my question, I laughed. Still, I wiped my nose off with my napkin. Okay, so you know Ruby Willow, the girl who wrote the cookbook Trevor gave me, is 12 like me, I said. Well, actually, I think she's 13 now, but she was 12 when she won the baking show. Mom picked up the creamer and poured some into her coffee mug, which had the restaurant's logo, an illustration of a cracked egg with a smiley face. Of course, she won the Kids Bake Challenge. Yes, that's her. That's the show where the one kid made a brownie look like a hamburger, right? Dad asked. He didn't usually watch the show with us. Right. The episodes where the contestants had to make dessert imposters. Desserts that looked like savory foods were always my favorites. So Ruby Willow won, and she got $20,000. I said it slowly for effect. Dad almost choked on his orange juice. Did you say $20,000? I smiled. Yep. The winner also gets to publish their own cookbook, like Ruby Willow's. Wow. Well, that is impressive. I know. She is amazing. Remember how I said I wanted to be on the show? Well, I just found out that the Food Network is about to cast the next season, so you can apply until the middle of September. I'm finally old enough. Will you fill out the application for me? Mom and Dad gave each other a look, like they weren't sure how to answer. It would be an amazing experience, I added. I've been baking at home for so long, but if I got on the show, I could learn from the mentors and judges Real professional bakers. You're sure you want to be on TV? Dad asked. I want to win the competition and it's on TV, so yeah. To be honest, I was a little nervous about the being on TV part, but I was pretty sure I could handle it. It wasn't like I would be acting in a sitcom or something. I'd just be myself. I know I said we would talk about this when you were old enough, but I'm not sure, Mom said. Why not? I asked. If I won, the money could go into my college fund. True, Dad said. But when does the filming happen? During school? I'm not sure, I said. And I assume you have to travel somewhere for the filming? Mom asked. I don't think they filmed in Boston. I don't know, I said. Mom said, giving Dad another meaningful look. Before you say no, let me get you more of the details, I said. You always say you can't make an informed decision until you know all the facts, right? That's true, Mom said. Great. I'll show you the website when we get home, I said. It would be the perfect distraction while I snuck off to check the mail. In the meantime, if it's not a no, right? It's not a no, Dad said. But it's not a yes either, Mom added. It was a maybe. I could work with that. The next morning, Mom and I headed to the farmer's market, which we did most weekends during the summer. We'd get to the market right when it opened at 9 a.m. so we could see the best selection. We'd learned our lesson 2 summers earlier when we got to the market later in the morning and all the best produce was gone. Sometimes there was live music. Today a girl was playing a pop song I recognized from the radio on her violin. Are Jasmine and Maya gone yet? Mom asked as we walked along the different tables, keeping our eyes out for free samples. Yeah, I miss them. We stopped in front of a fruit vendor. On the table were little blue cardboard cartons of blueberries, blackberries, and raspberries, and the tarts on the cover of Ruby Willow's cookbook sprang into my mind. Then I remembered the recipe for the lemon blueberry pie that was inside it, so I picked up a container of the blueberries. Can I get these? I asked Mom. Sure, let's get some of these cherries too. She grabbed a carton of those and walked to the guy behind the cash box to pay. I know you hate when they go away, but you still managed to have fun during the summer, right? I did, back when I still had Trevor. I guess, I said. I grabbed one of the blueberries before Mom put the carton in her tote bag and popped it into my mouth. It was perfectly juicy. Mom turned to me and pushed her sunglasses to the top of her head. Okay, so I have some good news. What? I asked. Your dad and I looked on the website for the cooking show you wanted to be on. I gripped Mom's arm. And we're not sure you're ready for something like that. I let go of her and frowned. I'm ready. Just listen. We're not sure right now, but we're going to give you a chance to prove it to us. Do you want me to bake all the recipes in Ruby Willow's cookbook? Because I can. I'd already thought that it would be a good practice. That's what the blueberries are for. We were still standing right next to the fruit vendor, which was getting more crowded by the second, so Mom and I moved out of the way. We ended up in front of a table with different homemade soaps and lotions that smelled like vanilla and lavender. Some of the soaps had pressed flowers. That sounds great, Mom told me as she smelled one of the soaps. But what do you think about doing an internship at a bakery this summer? What do you mean? I asked. I talked to Ariana last night and she said she can always use extra help during the summer, since the bakery is extra busy. You can go over and help her out once a week and she can also teach you some of her baking tricks. Are you serious? Yep. If you do a good job, if Ari gives you a positive review, then at the end of the summer, you can apply to the Food Network show. I couldn't believe it. I could be on the Kids Bake Challenge and intern at a real professional bakery. Thank you so much! I tackled Mom with a hug. She laughed as she hugged me back. You're welcome, but don't get too excited yet. You still have a lot of work to do. Working in a bakery is not easy. I could totally handle it. When do I start? Tomorrow. Dad will drop you off on the way to work and you'll stay for the first half of the day. Then he'll pick you up around lunchtime. How does that sound? Amazing! I grinned. If I was gone for only half the day, then I could still check the mail for a letter from Marcus when I got home. I hated that I had to pay so much attention to the mail, but maybe I wouldn't have to. We continued our loop around the market and passed by 4 vendors before I built up the nerve to say, Mom, can I ask you something? Of course, she said. Would you ever let me speak to Marcus? I asked. Like maybe send him a letter in prison? Mom stopped walking, and her expression got serious. Marcus? She said his name like it tasted rotten. Why would you want to do that? Because he's my dad. I mean, my birth dad. He may have had something to do with your birth, but that's it. My mom's voice hardened. He's never even seen you. Because I'm not allowed to visit him, right? I asked. Right, she said. I'm not taking you to a prison. But shouldn't I get to decide if I want to know him? I asked. When you're an adult, if that's what you want, I can't stop you. But right now, you're still a child, Mom said. I frowned. You act like I'm a baby. I'm 12 now, practically a teenager. Mom shook her head. There's still so much you don't know. So tell me. I didn't mean for it to come out so loud. A few people turned their heads to look at us. Mom pulled me away from the center of the market, and we ended up next to a big oak tree. She put her hands on my shoulders and looked me in the eyes. Listen to me. Marcus is not a good man. He lies and manipulates people. And he's a convicted murderer. I don't want him in your life. You have to understand. She paused. Where is this coming from, and why are you asking about this now? No reason, I mumbled. Are you sure? Mom asked. Yes. Okay then. I don't want to talk about this anymore, she exhaled. Let's go home. I silently followed Mom to where we parked our car. My chest felt tight. Mom wasn't being fair. I wasn't a little kid anymore. I was old enough to figure out for myself how I felt about him. Besides, Marcus couldn't hurt me from behind bars. I had no choice. His letters would have to stay secret. All right, All Stars, that's all I have time for today. I hope you join me again next week and I'll read a few more chapters. Have a great day learning. Chapter 9. The next morning, after my parents left for work, I poked my head into the living room where Grandma was reading a book on the couch. Hi, Grandma, I said. Can I walk to the mailbox? I'll be right back. I have a letter for Maya. Grandma put her book down and then twisted around to peer out the window. Isn't it raining outside? Streaks of rain slid down the outside of our window. I think the mail carrier will take the letter if you leave it in your own mailbox, Grandma said. Ours usually forgets, I said, not knowing whether or not that was true. Anyway, I don't mind the rain. I have a rain jacket and I'll carry an umbrella. I'm only going to the corner of the street. Grandma stood up and joined me in the foyer. I guess that's all right. Hurry back, though, in case it starts to thunder. Okay. I was holding Marcus's letter, and I tucked it under my chin, address side down, while I put on my rain jacket. As I slipped my left arm into my sleeve, the letter fell to the floor, address side up. Marcus's name was right there in plain sight. Grandma bent over to help me pick up the envelope, and it was like I was watching her in slow motion. I've got it! I yelled. I bent over and snatched the letter off the floor before Grandma could, bumping heads with her in the process. Sorry, I said as she stood up again, rubbing her head. That's okay, baby. I hugged the letter to my chest as Grandma looked at me funny. Had she seen Marcus's name and the address on the envelope? I couldn't tell from the expression on her face. Before Grandma could say anything, I grabbed the umbrella from the holder in the closet and opened the front door. Be right back, I said, and hurried outside to the mailbox, my heart thundering in my chest. Trevor was in the back seat of Dad's car when it was time to leave for Aries Cakes on Monday morning. I opened the front passenger door. What are you doing in here? Trevor shrugged. I'm coming. What? I turned to Dad in the driver's seat. What's he talking about? He's coming with you to your internship, Dad explained. Just for today. Patricia got called into work and asked if he could spend the morning with us. What about Simon? Watching Trevor was supposed to be his brother's responsibility. He's still in Maine, Trevor said, camping with his friends. He comes back today. It's only for a few hours, Dad said. I already asked Ariana, and she said it was fine. Why didn't anyone ask if it was okay with me? This was so typical. Get in, Zoe. We're going to be late, said Dad. I jumped into the car and put my seatbelt on. Dad pulled out of the driveway, and I leaned my head against the window. Not even Dad's light jazz radio station could calm me. How's your summer been? Dad asked Trevor. Okay, I guess, Trevor said. I've been playing basketball a lot. You're a point guard, right? Dad asked. Yeah. I stared out the window and tuned them out. My headphones were in my backpack, so I dug them out and put them on. I listened to music for the rest of the ride. Dad dropped us off in front of Aries Cakes 20 minutes later, and Trevor and I got out of the car without speaking a word to each other, but I wasn't going to let him ruin my mood. It was much less crowded in the bakery than on the 4th of July. There were only a few customers in line, and Ariana was behind the counter, helping one of them with their order. Hey, Zoe. Hey, Trevor, she said when they spotted us. Hi, we both responded in unison. I glared at Trevor, wishing he would disappear. Zoe, why don't you go grab your apron? Ariana said. Get one for Trevor, too. I'll meet you in the kitchen. I headed to the kitchen and stopped at the closet with the aprons. I grabbed one for each of us. I shoved an apron at Trevor. Here, I said in a low voice. This internship is really important to me. My parents said I can audition for Kids Bake Challenge if I do well. Wow, so you might get to be on TV? Maybe, I said. That's cool. Anyway, I said, you better not embarrass me here. Trevor looked offended. Why would I do that? I didn't ask to come here. Why didn't you go hang out with Lincoln or Sean instead? I asked as I pulled my apron over my head. Trevor did the same. Too last minute, I guess. I glared at him. When are you going to tell me why you're mad at me? Trevor asked. There was no way I was going to talk to him about that here, but before I could answer, Ariana appeared. So Zoe, remember Vincent, our head baker? I nodded. You're going to shadow him today while he bakes a few batches of cupcakes. I smiled. Cool. I finally get to do some baking. He's expecting you. Don't forget to wash your hands. Trevor walked to the sink behind me. While we washed our hands at the sink, I scanned the room and spotted Liz mixing blue food coloring into a bowl of icing and Corey rolling out some red fondant, this thick Play-Doh-like icing. Rosa was taking a tray of cupcakes out of the oven. Trevor followed me to Vincent at the huge stand mixer. That morning he was wearing a dark purple bandana. Hi, I said. Ariana said we're helping you today. Right, he said. I have to make 500 mini cupcakes for a charity event. Wow. What charity? I asked. Vincent shrugged. Don't remember the name. That's Ari's job. I just bake what I'm told. Something to do with education, I think. Interesting, I said, imagining possible cupcake decorations. They would make little fondant pencils and maybe even some fondant apples with little worms poking out. That would be so cute. Maybe that was what Corey was making with the red fondant. Hopefully, I'd get to help with that part. Better get started, Vincent said. I watched closely as he turned the mixer on. First, he put butter and sugar into the large metal bowl. He slowly added a bowl of eggs he'd already cracked. I kept waiting for Vincent to stop and let me try a step, like adding the flour and milk, which he did next, but he never did. I thought he might share a baking tip, but he didn't say a word. It was like he'd forgotten I was there. This is boring, Trevor said to me in a low voice. Why isn't he letting us do anything? Shh. I kept my eyes on Vincent as he added more flour and milk to the batter. I thought the whole point of an internship is so that you can learn how to do this stuff too. Would you be quiet? Hey, Mr. Vincent, Trevor asked, but not loud enough for Vincent to actually hear. What are you doing? I hissed at Trevor. I'm gonna ask him if you can help. You don't have to do that, I said. You do it then, Trevor said. Aren't you getting bored just watching? I wasn't bored, but I did wish I was doing something more. I thought this internship would be more hands-on. So far I've gotten to touch in this place was cardboard. Okay, I'll ask him, I whispered. Excuse me, sir? I tried to speak loudly enough to be heard over the mixer. Vincent glanced up at the two of us as he turned the mixer off. Yes? I was wondering if I could help with the next step. I glanced at the table next to the mixer, which had a few large mini cupcake pans. There was also an ice cream scoop next to them. You're going to scoop the batter next, right? I can help with that. Vincent looked hesitant. I don't think so. This order is very important, and we can't afford to start over because a kid messed something up. I'm not a kid, I'm an intern. I won't mess it up, I promise, I said. Let me scoop a couple and show you. Vincent looked unsure. Then Ariana came over. How's it going over here? She asked. Great, Trevor said, smiling. Vincent said he's going to let Zoe scoop the batter. I stared at Trevor. Actually, I'm not really, Vincent started. Sounds good, Ariana said. Zoe, you only want to fill each cup in the pan about halfway, so there's room for the batter to expand. She picked up the ice cream scoop. Want to give it a try? I beamed and grabbed the scoop from her. Vincent had to get out of my way in order for me to reach inside the mixing bowl. He didn't look too happy about it, but I ignored him as I scooped up some batter and then dropped it into the pan. It was so easy. I didn't know how anyone could mess it up. Perfect, Ariana said. She went over to Vincent and put her hand on his shoulder, whispering something to him that I couldn't hear. I scooped the rest of the batter into the pans. Then Vincent lifted them into the oven. He clicked a timer on it. Right. This oven will warn us when it's almost time to take the cupcakes out at the 18-minute mark. While we wait, we can start the next flavor, Vincent said, taking the dirty bowl out of the mixer. While he did that, Trevor whispered to me, You're welcome. I scowled at him. For what? You got to scoop the batter because of me. He looked satisfied with himself. Because you lied to Ariana. It was a tiny lie, Trevor said. You got what you wanted, didn't you? Yeah, but I told you not to mess this up for me. I'm not. I just made it better for you. Vincent cleared his throat, and I looked up at him. The mixer now had a shiny new bowl in it. "Are you ready to bake?" he asked, "or do you need more time to finish your argument?" My face suddenly felt as hot as the oven. "I'm ready." I glared at Trevor one more time, and then set out to ignore him for the rest of the morning. Chapter 10. Trevor and I didn't say anything to each other for the rest of our time at Aries Cakes, and after Grandma picked us up, we stayed quiet during the entire car ride home. When Grandma pulled in front of our house, Trevor's brother's car was parked in the driveway, and with the trunk still open. A rolled-up sleeping bag and duffel bag were on the ground. Simon, a taller version of Trevor, but with glasses, came out of the house and picked up the sleeping bag, tucking it under his arm. He waved when he saw us. "Thanks for the ride," Trevor said to Grandma before jumping out of the car. Grandma looked at me, her hand still on the steering wheel. "You okay?" "Fine." I unclicked my seatbelt and reached for the door handle. "Wait," Grandma said, putting her hand on my leg. "You want to run an errand with me?" I glanced out the window at Trevor helping Simon bring more camping stuff inside. "Yes, please," I said, and put my seatbelt back on. When I realized Grandma was driving to Cambridge, I knew exactly where she was taking us. Her favorite tea shop, Cambridge Tea Room. They sold loose teas in all sorts of interesting flavors. Some of them even tasted like baked goods, like blueberry muffins and banana nut bread. There were always multiple Cambridge Tea Room containers on the counter in Grandma's kitchen, and she even left one at our house. When we got there, Grandma went to the counter to place her order while I went to see what samples they were giving out that day. According to the cards on the two dispensers, that day's sample flavors were a cold watermelon mint and a warm chocolate chai. I filled 2 small cups with each. The chocolate chai was yummy and smelled amazing. I didn't love the watermelon one, so I poured myself another sample of the chocolate tea to get rid of the taste. Then I joined Grandma at the counter. "What flavors are you getting?" I asked. "Another container of green ginger, my favorite, and I'm going to try the new pink lemonade flavor. Sounds summery." "It's really good," the lady behind the counter said. "I love your earrings, by the way." Grandma's earrings of the day were blue, yellow, and black and white featherings hanging around from gold studs. "Thank you," Grandma said, beaming. Grandma got pink lemonade tea for both of us, plus chicken salad sandwiches with salt and pepper chips. Then we sat down at a table near the window. "I want to talk to you about something," Grandma said when we were done eating. "Okay, about what?" I took a sip from my cup. Even though it was hot, the tea tasted refreshing, like pink lemonade would. "Your father, Marcus." I coughed, and tea dribbled down my chin. I wiped it off with my napkin. "You saw his name on my letter," I said, tensing up in my seat. She folded her hands on the table. "Yes." I tried to read Grandma's face, but I couldn't figure out what she was thinking. "Mom and Dad don't know about it," I admitted. "I figured that," Grandma said. "How?" "If your mom knew, she would have told me." Am I in trouble? I braced myself for another lecture about why I shouldn't communicate with Marcus. "Not at all." She sipped her tea. "I'm not?" Grandma sighed. "It's natural to want to know about your father." "Even if he's a criminal?" I asked. "Even if he's a criminal," Grandma repeated. The worry deep down in my belly lifted up and away like the steam from my teacup. "How long have you been writing to Marcus?" she asked. I wasn't sure if I should tell her, but it seemed like if anyone would understand it might be Grandma. "Not long," I said. "He sent 2 letters, and I've sent 2 back." Grandma nodded. "That time I saw you with a letter in your room, it wasn't from your friend at camp, was it?" I shook my head. "You were upset. Are the letters bothering you?" Grandma asked. "No. In that letter Marcus said he wanted me before I was born. I wasn't expecting that." A lump appeared in my throat. "I see," Grandma said. "Do you think Marcus is bad?" I asked. "He sounds nice when he writes to me, but he's in prison for doing something terrible." Grandma shook her head. "You know, there are multiple sides to everyone. People aren't so black and white. Sometimes good people do bad things, and bad people do good things." "So you think Marcus is only somewhat bad?" I asked. She opened her mouth as if to say something, but then changed her mind and closed it. What? I asked. I think Marcus is a good person at heart, she said. I kind of want to keep writing to him, I told Grandma. I still have so many questions, but Mom can't know about this. I paused. Will you keep my secret? Grandma exhaled. I don't know, baby. I shouldn't keep secrets about you from your mom. Please, I promise I'll tell her. I just want to write a few more letters to Marcus before she makes me stop. You know she won't let me write to him. A few long seconds passed as Grandma stared thoughtfully out the window. You're probably right, she said, looking at me again. I still don't like the idea of lying to my daughter. But this situation is not normal, and I think your mom has been stubborn. She has let her own feelings about Marcus get in the way. Grandma paused and then said, But how about you give him my address instead? You can read his letters at my house, but I'll read each of them first to make sure they're okay. Really? I asked. Yes, but you have to come clean with your mom, Grandma said, before the summer is over. Okay. I had no idea how I would tell my mom about this, but I'd figure that out later. I guess I'll write to Marcus tonight and give him your address. Good idea. I'll mail it for you tomorrow. I leaned over and gave Grandma a hug. She smelled like the lemonade tea and honey. Thank you. Of course, she squeezed me back. I love you, baby girl. You know that? I love you too. From the desk of Zoe Washington, July 11th. Dear Marcus, I told my grandma about these letters and she's glad I'm writing to you. Do you mind sending your letters to her house instead? Her address is below. I paused and pressed the back of the pen against my chin. I thought about what Grandma said and about people not being black and white. Maybe that's how Marcus was. He did something terrible and the worst thing I could imagine, but at the same time, he'd been sweet to me in his letters and had interesting things to say. I still wanted to know more about him. Maybe he'd changed and was a better person now. The one thing I'd been holding back talking to Marcus about was his crime. Before I could change my mind, I started writing again. I've been wondering about what you did. I know a little about it. I don't want to think about you being a murderer, not when you've been so nice to me in these letters. Are you sorry you did it, Zoe? P.S. Send me another song. I started making a playlist called Little Tomatoes Playlist. I thought you'd like that. That brings us to the end for today, All Stars. I will see you next week.